Welcome and thank you for joining today's teleconference Market Settlement Timeline Transformation Training. Before we begin, please ensure you have opened the chat panel by using the associated icon located at the bottom of your screen. If you require technical assistance, please send a chat to the event producer. All audio lines have been muted until the Q&A portion of the call. We will give you instruction on how to ask a question at that time. With that, I'll turn the call over to Rochelle Wiltsius, Manager of Customer Readiness.
All right, thank you so much. So hello to everyone, and thanks for joining us today for the Market Settlements Timeline Transformation Training webinar. So as Booker mentioned, my name is Rochelle Wiltsius, and I'm going to be the one taking you through today's session. I'm actually joined virtually by some of my colleagues who are going to or may speak up during the question and answer period to help provide some clarity when needed as we discuss this topic. And they're going to introduce themselves just shortly here. Also, I want to let you know that in an effort to increase transparency and provide greater service to our stakeholders, we are recording this webinar. It's going to be posted on our website so that you can review it in the future, and for those that aren't able to join the live call today. After this training is completed, I'm also going to post these slides on kaiso.com along with the recording of this training, and those two things can be found in the Learning Center, in our Learning Center, under new modules and also on the release planning page under the fall of 2020 releases. As we progress through the training, I'm going to be stopping for question and answer periods, and I'll also be documenting all of the questions that you have and updating the training accordingly. So if we don't have an answer for you now, we'll take that, put it on the parking lot, and get the answer and update the training, hopefully in about a week's time. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. First, I'm going to let my subject matter expert introduce herself. Karen, do you want to just give a quick introduction here?
Hi, yes, my name is Karen Vong, Lead Market Settlements Analyst, and I work in the production group. We produce the settlement statements and invoices.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Thanks, Karen. So she's going to be helping me out answering some of you guys' questions today since she is expert. Okay, so let's get started. First thing I want to talk about is after this training what you should be able to do so you know what the goal is. We're going to talk about the purpose for the Market Settlements Timeline Transformation Initiative. So why are we making these changes? You'll be able to explain the three major changes of this initiative. You'll be able to identify the differences between the current required and optional settlement timelines, and then the new timelines that are going to start January 1st, 2020. And lastly, you're going to understand where you can find updated information and resources for this initiative. So those are the four things that we're going to be talking about today. Okay. So first thing I want to do is give you a little bit of background as far as why this change is heading your way. So basically, our current settlement timeline is compressed, which can place a burden on both the ISO and on market participants. So it causes the ISO to publish statements at a lower financial quality because it doesn't include meter data, and sometimes to even possibly delay the publication of those statements. And so essentially what the change in this timeline is doing are these two things in front of you. Number one, we want to produce initial statements that more closely approximate your final settlement statement. And two, it allows sufficient time for both us, the ISO, and you, the market participant, to resolve those disputes. Okay? One thing I do want to mention, those that have followed this initiative through the stakeholder process, they did have a piece in there about a dispute threshold that has been removed from the original proposal, and it's not going to be implemented as part of the scope of this project. So it's just these two items that you see in front of you. All right, so this is where you guys start to get a little bit involved here. So it's not going to be me all talking, it's going to be you guys answering. So I have a quick poll for you, and I'm going to have some polls for you throughout this training. I'm going to open up in just a second. So on your dashboard, you're going to see this question. I want to know, how excited are you for the new market settlements timeline? So maybe you want to say, bring it on, I'm ready to go. Maybe you're waiting to hear a little bit more. you're a little apprehensive, and last but not least, it's okay if you answer this question this way: why am I in this training in the first place? I don't get it. So I'm going to go ahead and open this poll for you guys. On your WebEx dashboard, if you're on the web version, go ahead and answer that question for me really quick. You got about 30 seconds. And let's see how we feel so far. Okay, got 20 more seconds here. Get that poll in. Right? 5 seconds. You guys have a couple more seconds to answer, and let's see where we fall here. All right. So hopefully you guys should be able to see the poll results in front of you right now. We're all over the board, which is great. So we have some people saying bring it on. A lot of people want to hear more. I'm a little apprehensive. That's awesome. That's what we're in this training for today. And then I got to love those 4 people that asked, why the heck am I in this training? So hopefully at the end of this training, you'll know the answer to that a little bit more. All right, so let's keep going. So I'm not going to spend some time going over the definitions, but in case you want to review this slide deck on your own, I do like to list these in here. So the list of definitions you see here are going to be littered throughout the training, just in case you want to refer back to them. The 2 I want to point out for you is the plus B and the T plus. So those of you that are in settlements have probably heard about these a lot. Of course, that plus B means the certain number of days plus the additional business days. And then, of course, the T plus being the trade date plus the X number of days. So we'll see that a lot as we move throughout this training. So I'm going to give you a quick overview. I promised you the 3 big changes that this initiative is going to do, and here they are for you. The first one is to realign, consolidate, and extend the required settlement timeline. Okay, so what are those required settlement statements coming out to you, and what are the new timelines for those? The second one is to realign and shorten the optional settlement timeline. So right now it goes up to 36 months out after the trade date. So what is the change for that? And then third, increasing the flexibility in publishing those statements and weekly invoices. So there's not a huge change here, but I did want to go over a little bit of that change. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump right into that first one. So what you're looking at right here is the current required settlement timeline. So you guys are getting your initial statement at 3 business days after the trade date. So that's what that 3B means, right? And then your meter data is due at 8 business days, so that the subsequent statement, or I should say you can enter meter data at 8 business days, so that 12 business day statement is the first one with meter data on it. Okay, and then, of course, that last required statement is at 55 business days after the trade date, with another opportunity and requirement to submit meter data at 48 business days. So this one you should be pretty familiar with, okay? But now we're going to go into what the new timeline is going to look like, and then we're going to compare and contrast so you guys can see the differences, okay? First of all, you'll notice that the number of statements has been reduced from 3 to 2, okay? And that the initial statement is not coming at 3 business days after the trade date, although those market price corrections are still happening. But metadata can be submitted at 7 business days, and so the first statement is going to be after that meter data is submitted. Okay. You have 22 business days to submit disputes after each initial statement. Okay, you can submit. And the requirement is that meter data is due at 42 business days after the trade date, and then finally your last required statement at 70 business days after the trade date. So we saw the current one, we saw the new one. Now let's go ahead and compare the 2 and talk about the big differences. Okay, the first one being the most significant change, of course, eliminating that first initial statement at 3 business days after the trade date. Okay. So it's the first big change. The second one being allowing the ISO to incorporate price corrections and your settlement quality meter data into your first initial statement, as you can see. And last, the deadline for submitting meter data has been pushed out a little bit. It's at 52, and your last required statement has also been pushed out at 70 business days. So we're going to still talk about the optional statements, but what I want to do is I want to pause here to allow people to ask some questions. Remember, we still have a lot of training to go to talk about how this is going to work with timelines, but just on the differences between these statements, I want to go ahead and open it up for questions. So you can put a question in the chat, or if you'd like, you can go ahead and ask us a question, and Booker will go ahead and walk us through that process. So Booker, can we open it up for questions?
As we move to the Q&A, for verbal, please press #2 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. You will hear a notification when your line is unmuted. At that time, please then state your name and question. Once again, pressing #2 will indicate that you wish to ask a question. Via chat, to submit a written question, select all panelists from the drop-down menu in the chat panel. Enter your question in the message box provided and send.
All right, thanks, Booker. So do we have any questions in the queue?
Rachel, this is Mel Shabal.
Okay.
Yeah, Rachel. So, yeah, there are other experts in CAISO that are also on the line. We just can't see the WebEx, but it's okay. We can listen, and just, if there are questions relevant, we can respond to design and configuration changes. This is Mel Shabal for design configuration. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Pressing #2 indicates that you wish to ask a question.
Any questions in the queue, and then we'll move to the chat.
There are currently no questions in the queue.
All right. So let's go ahead and move to the chat. I did notice someone asked that the first invoice is going to be at 9 days, and the cash will be received 1 week later. So I just want to clarify, maybe someone here knows more about the collateral or the payments than I do, but do any of my subject matter experts on the phone, are they able to take this question?
So hi, this is Karen Vong. The way we will be invoicing will not change. Again, this is just a timeline change. Currently, your invoicing still includes the 7 business days. Instead of invoicing on the 3B, we now invoice on the 9B, but each weekly invoice will still remain the same, and the due date will still continue to be 4 business days after we invoice.
Great. Thanks, Karen. All right, and we do have another question, and it says, will monthly information be available prior to the initial 9B statement for accounting purposes? Does anyone, subject matter expert, know the answer?
So, hi, this is Karen Long again. Specifically, what monthly information are you referring to? So, with the current process and with going into the new process, when we publish the last trade date of the month, we also publish the monthly invoice for that month.
All right. Kyle, I hope that answered your question. If it didn't, you can go ahead and respond back in the chat if you still have some additional questions. All right, Booker, do we have any other questions in the queue before we move on?
We do appear to have one question in the queue.
All right.
Caller, go ahead, state your name and question.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Josh Arnold, PG&E. Not a question per se, but a clarification I wanted to bring up from the stakeholder initiative process regarding the collateral and invoice changes. My recollection is that the first switch over, where we go from the current process to the new, from the T+3B, T+12B to the T+9B, that there will be an extra credit hit at the start of that process because there'll be an extra week on the invoice generation. Is that correct? And sorry about the dogs.
Sorry, it was a little hard.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, the past 4 years and everything. So the dogs are being very protective. So let me rephrase. do the transition on January 1st to the new T+9B statement, my recollection from the stakeholder process is that because of the gap from T+3 to T+9, that this would introduce an extra week in that initial invoice that would in fact have a credit and exposure risk to the participants that would have to be accounted for. But once the invoices are produced for that first week of T+9Bs, that we would then be back into a regular pattern. So there would be a credit hit just for that first week or so when we do the transition. Is that correct?
Hi, this is Karen Bong. Yes, that is correct.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Wanted to make sure that was my understanding was good.
Yeah, I think Josh, this is Mel. I think you're right in your assessment. There's definitely going to be more on that first week, more credit, depending on what the situation, whether it's payment or charges. Yeah.
Right, but as soon as we get back into the invoice cycle, then that credit risk is removed because we're back into a regular payment and compensation series. So it's just for that initial first transition. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and move on, and then we will stop for questions here again shortly as well after we talk about the optional timeline. So let's continue. Okay, so let's talk about our current optional settlements timeline. That's what you're looking at right here. You have 4 different optional settlements, one at 9 months, one at 18 months, one at 33 months, and one at 36 months. So essentially the sunset process, we call it, is at 36 months here with disputes due 22 business days after each of those optional settlements. And the change is going to be listed as such. So you'll see the optional statements will have been reduced from 4 to 3, and they'll also be given at different time frames. So we have one at 11 months, one at 21 months, and one at 24 months. So let's go ahead and compare both of those together so you can see what the big changes are, with the current one being at the top and the new timeline at the bottom. The first thing being, of course, the reduction in number of optional statements from 4 to 3, and then the reduction of the normal settlement life cycle from 36 months to 24 months, so essentially from 3 years to 2 years. Okay, so I'm going to pause here again, and I'm going to talk more about, actually, you know what? I'm going to go through the optional settlement stuff, and then we'll pause, because I want to make sure I give you guys 100% clarity. So some other optional settlement information, there is no dollar threshold to trigger that optional statement, so that is not changing. That final statement, that T plus 24-month statement, is not subject to dispute unless it's directed by the ISO governing board or FERC. So that is your final statement with those exceptions. And then the ISO will trigger optional recalculation using the exact same criteria that it uses today. So there is no change to that. In case you're curious what those are, they're listed on your screen for you. So settlement adjustments based on software defect resolutions, participant dispute resolutions that were identified prior to the recalc settlement, good faith negotiation, or of course for mandated adjustments. So that's what will trigger those optional recalculations. And last but not least, I wanted to mention what is not included in the scope of the project are timelines for invoicing charges in the blue in front of you. So things like reliability coordinator services, including HANA services, WEC coordinating council. So all of those items and invoices will not change for you. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and pause. And then if I could get some questions either in the chat, feel free, or Booker, if you want to go ahead and open up the line for questions.
Press pound 2 to indicate that you wish to ask a question. Pressing pound 2.
While we're reading,
Sorry.
do we have a question in the queue?
No, there are no questions in the queue at this time.
Okay, we do have one over chat, and then Karen, if you want to confirm, or any of my other subject matter experts, David wants to know, so no single invoice will cover an entire month, is that correct?
So the monthly, this is Karen, the monthly invoice will begin with the optional statements. For the required statements, your T plus 90 and T plus 70B will be weekly invoicing. So the 90 will follow the 70. So whatever bill periods you see in the 90, you will see in the 70B.
All right, and we have another question here from Ryan. So activity from December 31st will potentially have a T plus 36 in the invoice, while January will stop at T plus 24. And I'm excited because I can answer that one, and the answer is yes. So we're going to talk more about what that timeline transformation looks like in just a second, and hopefully go in depth a little bit more for you on that. Right? And so someone asked me to go back to page 22. Absolutely, I can do that if you want to look at that. And then David asked, so no more invoices like the current T plus 55B. Is that correct, Karen?
So T plus 55B, you will continue to have it up to trade date 12/31/2020, and then from 1/1 onwards, you will not have T plus 55.
Great. All right. Let's see. We have a question from Jeff. Is the ISO seeking to increase its responsiveness to disputes with the reduced timeline? So he says, we've observed several disputes being left outstanding until the T33 and T36 statements are the metrics that the ISO will use to measure timely dispute resolution.
With the dispute resolution, we actually made it so that it is 22 days all the way across for all statement types, where previously with your T plus 3B initial statements, you could not dispute it. Starting with the new timeline, you can dispute an initial statement.
Great. And I'm going to go back a little bit in the chat here because I missed this one. Caroline asks, will we still be allowed to dispute delta amounts only or all on the optional statements?
With your T plus 90 and your T plus 70, you can dispute all, and then all the optionals, it's changes only. That part is not changing.
Okay, so no changes to that. Great. And then we have one more question. Will the initial and first recalc follow the same methodology as today, i.e. the T plus 70B will include the same billing period dates as the T plus 90?
Yes, this is the same question that David also asked. So the T plus 90 and the T plus 70B follow the same bill period.
Great.
Also, we have posted on our website a link. We have posted on our website a copy of a draft of the payment calendar for 2021. So I can provide a link to everybody on this chat so that you can see what it looks like.
Yep. Actually, Karen, we're going to look at that together.
Okay.
The training too. Okay, great. So now what we're going to do is, I want to talk about that final third change. And like I said, very, very small change here because consistent with the current practice, invoices are going to be published on Wednesdays still. But the initiative identifies what's considered timely. So invoices will be considered timely if they're published by 5 a.m. on Thursdays. So but they'll still be continued to be published on Wednesdays as currently. But for weekly invoices published after 5 a.m. on Thursdays, the invoice due date will be adjusted to be 4 business days from that invoice date. And this provision is only enacted as a result of some sort of processing issue. So just a little bit more clarity in what that process is for delays. So next, we're going to open my polls back up. I love having you guys involved in this training. So I have 2 poll questions for you. All right, the first one, I'm going to open it up right now for you. I want you to tell me, considering what we just learned in the new market settlement timeline, tell me what will be the first settlement statement that you're going to receive? What do you think? What is going to be the first settlement statement that you get? You got 10 more seconds to answer. Let's see. All right, here we go. Let me show you the poll results here. We have a good majority who got it right, which is 9 business days after the trade date. Perfect. It can be tricky if you look at the, we're going to go backwards and look at the timeline just really quickly so everyone's comfortable with that, is your first initial statement will show here at 9 business days. Great job. All right, and now we're going to, I'm going to ask you one more question before we move on. 1 second. All right. You should see another poll there. Here we go. Next thing I want to know from you guys is, in the new market settlements timeline, will you receive an optional statement at 36 months after the trade date? So you betcha I will get one. Nope, not going to get one. If I request it, sure. And, of course, I have no idea. Rochelle, help me. What do you guys think? Let's see. Take a guess if you don't know. Got 10 seconds left, 5 seconds. Let's see what we think as a group. All right. Oh, poll results. You guys should see that. Awesome job, guys. Yes. So unless it's, of course, disputed by those things that we talked about with FERC or the governing board, your last statement in the new settlements timeline will be at 24 months after the trade date. Okay, and we'll talk about that transition here in just a second. Great job. Fantastic job, I should say. So let's go into those resource changes here. And it was exactly what Karen was just talking about, the ISO payment calendar. So we have created a payment calendar that has a timeline overlap between the existing timeline and the new timeline, so that each day of the next year you'll be able to see what statements you can expect based on that trade date. So this has been posted on the ISO website, and I'm actually going to go into it right now, so I'm going to show it to you guys. We're going to open it up together. Oh, make sure that you guys mute your phone because I hear a little bit of background noise. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen with you here. Okay. So what you are looking at right now is the release planning page for 2020. And I've also linked this in the presentation if you guys want to open up the presentation and don't want to dig around on our website. But right here under Market Settlement Timeline Transformation, you're going to see the draft ISO payment calendar for 2021. Okay. So if you open that up, it'll open up in a PDF. And what I think is really fantastic about this calendar is it outlines the difference between the current timeline in blue and the new timeline in gold. Okay, so as you're going throughout the calendar, you can see that the gold items are empty because this is an early trade date. So any trade date before that is going to follow the blue timeline. Whereas, of course, with our 9B statement, by the time you hit further down in January, now you're going to start following the new timeline. So the blue items will be phased out as you go, okay, as I'm going to scroll down, and the gold items will be phased in throughout the calendar. All right, let me scroll down a little bit more so you can start to see. Once a column of blue is phased out, it will no longer show in the payment calendar after that page. So the intent is to just transfer everything over to that new gold timeline. Right? So it's a really handy resource for you. Again, I have linked it on this calendar for you, or on the slide for you. Another thing I want to mention are tariff changes. On our Market Settlement Timeline Initiative stakeholder page, you will see the draft tariff language. So if you're one of those people that want to walk through the actual tariff changes, you can find them there. And then BPM changes. So every change to the BPM due to this settlement timeline change is going to be listed here for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, those 6 BPMs. And last but not least, for resource changes, we have some charge code impacts. So these are reviewed during the settlement user group biweekly meeting. If you have more questions about these charge codes and impacts of these charge codes, I highly recommend that you attend that meeting because they give just such great information. And if you have questions on that meeting, you can reach out to the settlements group or you can reach out to the customer readiness group and we can help you. So we talked a little bit about timelines, so let's talk more. Our new timeline is effective as of the trading date of January 1st, 2021. So trading dates through December 31st are going to be settled and billed on the current timeline. So the final trade date for the old timeline is the day before the production go live, which is January 1st. So what happens with trade dates before December 31st? So for any trade date prior to that go live, the ISO is going to keep publishing your T+3B, your T+12B, your T+55B, and then potentially optionally needed settlements like your T+9, 18, 33, and 36 for any date December 31st or prior. In regards to market simulation, if you guys want to take part in that process, we really encourage you to. And your timelines and your milestones are right in front of you. So we actually are going to start market simulation here soon. I wanted to get this training out to you first. That begins July 27th, and it continues on through September 4th. While the code itself will be deployed October 1st, it actually isn't going to be activated until January 1st. So I wanted to make sure to explain that because you might hear an October 1st deployment date, but that does not mean that that's when those changes are going to take effect. It will take effect January 1st. For those of you guys that are interested in participating in MarketSim, you can register for that using MarketSim at KaiSo.com. You need to identify at least 2 existing resources that are certified to submit meter data so that we can put you through the MarketSim process. These should have been submitted if you're paying attention to the MarketSim process as of July 3rd, but if you haven't done so and you still have an interest in participating in MarketSim, you can go ahead and send an email to MarketSim at KaiSo.com and ask if you are still able to be included and participate in that process. Great. And then here are the scenarios. We have 3 scenarios going through MarketSim. The first one, publishing an initial statement and invoice with the new trade date, publishing a recalc statement and a new invoice, and then validating running simultaneous settlement timelines between the current and the new settlement timeline. So those are the 3 that you'll take part in. Okay. All right. Last but not least, I want to talk about resources. You have questions, we have answers. So if you want to know more about this change, you can go to the Stakeholder Initiative page, and you can find the final draft proposal, presentations, videos of those presentations, and draft tariff languages on the Stakeholder Initiative page. And you can also find a ton of information on our release planning page. You can find the business requirements, you can find those market simulation scenarios, and that draft calendar. I did see a question about posting the calendar in Excel format. Karen or any of my other subject matter experts, do you know the answer to that? Once this has gone live, is there an intent to publish that calendar in Excel rather than PDF?
Hi, this is Karen. Normally we post our payment calendars in PDF file, and that PDF file that we provided a link to is actually a combination of a series of Excel spreadsheets so that we could eliminate the columns. So every single month is actually a different spreadsheet. So if we post the Excel version, it can be very, very confusing, but we can look into other options, or like maybe perhaps just posting an Excel file with the 2 tabs, the current timeline and then the NFTT timeline. But you'll see that before the 9B rolls in, it's going to be blank, and then as the different cycles are rolling off, you're going to see a lot of blank columns. So creating that PDF version that we have posted was actually a lot of work to combine a bunch of different Excel spreadsheets, but we will look into it.
Awesome. Thanks, Karen. We'll take that as that parking lot question. Great question. And then Tony identified, thank you so much, Tony. I have the wrong date. The effective date is January 1st, 2021, not 2020. So I apologize, and we'll make that edit as well, just to clarify. Let's see. Just looking through my questions here. Will the market simulation scenarios also include changes to the credit requirements? I don't know the answer to that. Do Karen or anyone else on the phone, do you know the answer to if the market sim scenarios will include those credit change requirements?
This is Karen. I'm not sure. It should, if we do have it, it should be in scenario. Hold on, which scenario did you have? Can you scroll up on your slide, please, Michelle?
Yes. Let me go back up here.
So if it should be in scenario 3, but we can confirm that.
Okay, great. And then also, let me see who asked that question. Well, actually, I'll just generally let everyone know you can reach out to marketsim@kaiser.com with those questions as well as far as what's being included.
But yeah, this is Mel, Rachel. This is Mel. Can we ask more information about the question about the credit? Because that I think would assume what's the starting point for the credit, and if they wanted to see whether there's an increase or decrease correspondingly. I'm not sure that that would be part of the market sim, or that can be assessed or checked during the market sim, because that would almost require the starting point.
Okay, so it's not part of the scope of the
I don't think it would be, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It would have to be properly designed if they wanted to test that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Barbara asked, I'm assuming invoices will still be published weekly and are available for us to download from the ISO website every Wednesday. That is correct, Barbara. All right. So before we open it up to final questions, I have one more question for you guys. So let me open the poll here, and I'm going to go down. I want to know, now that you have attended this training, do you feel like you have a good understanding of the new market settlement timeline? A, so yep, you're good to go. I got it. I know what I need to do. Maybe B, I feel relatively confident, but I still have some questions. C, I think I want to wait for Market Sim to answer that so that I can participate in that process. Or D, and this is okay, thanks for the training, but I'm still really confused. So go ahead and respond for me. Let's see where we're at. All right, 5 seconds. Here we go. All right, let's see what we have as a group. Hey, you guys rocked it. So most people chose, yep, they're good to go, or that they feel relatively confident. We still have some people that want to wait for Market Sim, which is great. That's what it's for. And then it's okay if you're still confused by this training. I would recommend maybe read through the materials and the resources, or even watch this training again, because we will upload it online, the recording online for you. So with that, I want to open the lines up for final questions about any of the training or anything that you have in your mind. I do want to remind you before we open the lines that all of your questions, I've recorded them down, whether we were able to answer or we want to take them back and get an answer for you, and I will update the presentation and notify you guys when that's updated with all of those questions. So we want to make sure that you're getting responses. Okay. So Booker, if we could go ahead and open the phone lines for questions.
Please press #2 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. Currently no questions in the queue.
All right. I did see a question here in chat by Sandra. So will the ISO perform meter estimation at only the initial statement? Any of my subject matter experts happen to have the answer to that?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Mel.
this is Mel. Yeah, the change basically is we now have meter data being looked at much earlier than before, and yeah, the meter estimation only happens if you don't receive the meter data. Basically, if they submit meter data the first time we're going to use it. The only time we would have to estimate is on the first run. Anything after that, which corresponds to the 70B, and in market sim the 9B, I think, will no longer be estimated. Anything that they have, if we estimated earlier the first time, it will be zeroed out in the next run. So it's very important that they submit the meter data, and we will make use of that as much as we receive. We only estimate the first time for the initial run, and that's it. It's zeroed out in the next run. I hope that answers the question.
All right. Thank you so much. Now, do we have any questions in queue? Any additional chat questions?
We do appear to have one question in the queue.
All right, bring it.
Go ahead, caller, state your name and question.
Hi, yes, this is Chen Yu from PG&E. On your slide 35, I believe the market sim actually ends at September 28th. Since you have everyone here listening, so also you guys going to simulate the 1-1 trade date using August 25th as simulating 1-1 2021 trade date for market sim.
Could you ask that question again? I don't think I quite understood. So which
not a question. It's a comment. It's not a question. So on your slide 36, you say the market sim concluded on the 4th, but it's concluded on the 18th.
I see. Oh, okay, September 18th. Or talking about, let me take that back. These were the dates that I was given for the end of market simulation. But
this is Mel. I knew what we've been preparing and planning. Chen Yu, can you hear me? So right now, I think we put up with the August 24. But that could very well change when we reach that date. But yeah, we had to prepare what configuration and test dates to use. We plan to use as a cut-off date between the new timeline and the old timeline is trade date 8/24. Like I said, that's just what we know right now.
I was told it's August 25th, all this time.
August 25th?
Yeah,
what's
can
the
you guys
consideration
make
for that?
sure that consistent, so because that is important for us, because when we prep the data, we want to make sure that whether we submit it on the 24th or 25th to simulate the 1-1 trade day.
Okay, so we need to work with Tron then. Yeah, please send that information.
thanks, Sonia. We'll take that back and get clarification.
Thanks.
All right. So with that, although actually, wait, I do have a couple more questions in the queue. So let's see. For cash flow forecasting, it seems we'll be receiving our monthly revenue later than we currently do. Is this correct? Anyone able to answer that?
Come again? Sorry, Rachel.
Sure, yeah. So Barbara asks, for cash flow forecasting, it seems that we will be receiving our monthly revenue later than we currently do. Is this correct?
Cash flow. So we're not already talking about market sim, and even in the future, I think it depends on when you receive the invoice. The invoice timing doesn't change. It's still weekly. So I'm not sure what the question with respect to cash flow reporting.
Yeah, maybe, Barbara, you can provide some additional information on your question there. Let's see. And then David asks, is the concept of unscheduled optional gone? So say between the T plus 11 months and the T plus 21 months.
No, this is Karen. The concept is not gone.
Okay, so that will remain.
Yes.
Great. Perfect. Okay. Okay, so Barbara responded back about her question. She says, since the invoice won't settle until 9 days, that means it won't be paid until later. Currently, the invoice is at 3 days. So maybe what you could do, Barbara, is reach out. So Karen, do we have an email address that Barbara could reach out to get clarification on the question?
Send an IMS ticket, please.
A ticket. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, Barbara, we want to get you an answer to your question. So if we could have you submit a ticket, that way someone can reach out to you to just get some additional clarification. That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Again, briefly, can I state this again now? I don't know if you can hear me. So briefly, the invoice doesn't change. The time the invoice doesn't change. What goes into the invoice is the one that's going to change. We're bundling a set of trade dates like before, right? No, regardless of whether it was calculated on a T plus 3D or a T plus 9D, it won't change because at any one point in time, if you look at an invoice, you will still have trade dates that could be aggregated on that specific invoicing date, which is, again, still kept to be weekly. So what changed, I think, is what is included in the invoice. But with respect to when it was calculated, I don't think it would be it would change much, right? But if you're referring to how much the money would be in an invoice, definitely it would change because you can only include, maybe that's not a wrong statement, you can include only the relevant trade dates for that specific weekly invoice.
All right. Okay, we're still getting some more questions in. How can invoices be paid weekly when settlements are not issued until 9 business days after the trade date? And I think the answer was that you'll just get paid out, you'll get moved out, right?
Yeah,
after?
Yeah, similar answer, Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you would still have some trade dates that would be that would need to be included in a weekly invoice. So it's just a matter of maybe you don't see the T plus 3B as soon as previously, but you still have the older trade dates that would need to be included in the upcoming weekly invoice. So it's not actually maybe the way of looking at it is to not see just because you have T plus 3B, you only have to look at a single trade date. It's not. We still have to settle every trade date anyway. Like I said, the only difference is instead of calculating on T plus 3D, you just get to calculate it on a later date. But you see what's included in a weekly invoice, you still have the older trade dates to include in there. So you always have something in a weekly invoice. It's just not the same trade date as before.
Got it. All right.
I hope that helps.
Yes. Okay, so let's go ahead and close this down for today. Like I said, you always have an option of emailing us at customerreadiness@kaiso.com. re-listening to this training, looking at your resources, or submitting city tickets if you have questions. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, these slides will be posted to the Learning Center, and in a couple of days, once we receive the recording from AT&T, we're going to go ahead and post that there as well. All right, any questions about this presentation can get sent to customerreadiness@kaiso.com. In a few days, you'll also receive an email from me requesting an evaluation of this training session. So please take a moment and fill that out. Other than that, that concludes our webinar for today. Thank you so much for your participation. You guys have been a fantastic group. I appreciate all of the interactivity and you guys staying with me through those poll questions. We hope that you found this training useful and informative, and I'm going to say have a great day.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using Event Services.